my very first taped YouTube video with me in it. That's me. And also, I've never recorded a complicated acrylic painting piece like this from beginning to end. You're looking at my art pantry. I have, as you can see, lots of pencils and pens and paint, and it's actually quite messy. I can get a little bit OCD about my tools and things. So the reason why I'm doing this one is because I have a lot of pieces that are unfinished, because I used to teach painting, doodling and painting and drawing. But whenever I'm coming up with something to paint that's interesting, I don't want to paint just the regular sunset with palm trees. I mean, you can do that with somebody else, but I want to paint something different. And I know it's the students' class, but if I'm teaching it, I want to make sure that I enjoy it too, and it's something that I would enjoy painting and finishing and hanging up on my wall, and not just putting it somewhere in the garage or basement. I have a love-hate relationship with painting with acrylic. There's a lot of pros and equally a lot of cons. The pros is it dries really fast. It's inexpensive. It's cheap. There's a lot of different colors now. There used to be pretty limited amounts of colors, but now there's a lot of colors. What I'm doing here is I am laying down a lot of base painting, they call it. Base painting is super important in acrylic painting, because it takes a lot of layers to cover anything in the background. That includes the canvas. One of my pet peeves of watching people painting or hanging up paintings that are acrylic is it doesn't look finished to me if I can see the canvas in the background. And yeah, I understand if you're trying to do something modern or a little edgy, but you should do a base painting. And if you want white in the background, like the color of the canvas, then you should paint it white, at least with gesso. Gesso is it's like a thicker base color that it does a couple of different things. It's sort of like a foundation you put on your face before you actually put the makeup, so it sets the stage for anything that it's going to receive. It also makes the canvas strings, the weave, the holes, the texture. You can kind of see a little bit here, the texture. You want to make that a little bit less rough, unless that's what you're going for. But it doesn't matter. I think you should always have some kind of a base painting. So on this one, obviously it was red, and it's great because the piece is mostly red. So here is a lot of back and forth. Of course, I've sped it up for you so you don't have to sit here and watch me paint every single stroke. I use the big brush to lay down the piece. This is an interesting part here where it looks like I'm doing some fog over the hills, but I laid down the mountains and the main colors or the objects of the painting, but I still want the sky to be continuous in the background. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth, which is different from oil painting. If you use oils, it can tend to get kind of muddy. So you have to plan a little bit ahead of time. But with acrylic painting, it dries so fast that you could change your mind, and 30 seconds later you can fix it. So here I am still adding the sunset and the I don't know what those are, clouds. A little bit about the artist. Actually, I don't know a lot about her. She's a Chinese contemporary, meaning she worked now. I believe that modern means in modern era of painting, but contemporary, I believe it means that they're still alive. Please let me know if I'm wrong. So apparently she's still alive. She's a Chinese artist, and I found her because I was looking for something to paint that was different, but also because I was looking at watercolor pieces, and I saw this really vibrant, very folky, contemporary pieces. They were very graphic and very bright and charming. And I looked and I saw this piece of Liang. And unfortunately, I can't recall her first name. I know that the Chinese, some Asian countries, they say their last name first. So I'm just laying down the base. Yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit. You probably shouldn't do that. You should really just lay down the big strokes and then go back. This is a really good place to show where if you have a dark color and you're trying to gradate it to a lighter color, I lay down both well, in this case, the red and then the black, and then I'll raise the black area a little bit more into the area that I want to be black and gradate to the red, and then I'll come back with the red and paint over it a little bit more so that it pushes the black back. I don't know how to explain that. I hope that makes sense. So one of the cons of acrylic painting is you can see here the green. I put the color down and you can see the background. I have a piece that I did a while ago. It's called Cuarta vez because it means 4 times. So it's a little bit of a play on words. I was watching the X-Files for the 4th time all the way through. And I also was trying to make a point that every surface, especially if I wanted it to be really flat and graphic and solid, I had to paint it at least a minimum of 4 times. So it gets a little annoying. You can tell right here in the middle here, this green, I really threw some on there because, I don't know, I get impatient. If the screen is shaking, I taped a lot of this from a year and a half ago. And I was holding the canvas because the glare of the light was on there. So I apologize for the shaking of the canvas. I've laid down the areas of the trees with a acrylic marker or acrylic marker. I think it depends on what kind of piece you're doing. If you're going to use an acrylic marker, I think it's great for small areas, more pop art. If you're doing a painting, lots of different gradations and similar to this piece is actually going to be a lot of solid colors and a lot of modeling so that it does look like the sun is in the background coming in the middle there. Getting back to the pen markers, it's probably not a good idea for really, really large areas. So if you're painting a shoe, or if you're doing line stuff like doodling, that's great. But if you're doing a piece that's got complicated areas and modeling and shading, I think it's better if you use a brush. So again, the canvas is shaking a lot. I apologize. I was holding it up because you could see the glare. It's really hard to paint at a certain angle and then also hold the canvas or have the canvas in the way or in the direction you want it. A lot of my students ask me why I don't have or provide easels. I do have easels, but a lot of times they want to know, why aren't there easels on the table? And I say to them, it's just simple, plain. So if you have something that's in front of you, straight in front of you, it is easier to see. There's no distortion of the canvas. But most of the classes, the pieces are very small. They're 10 by 10 to, I think the maximum we've ever painted is 12 by 20 or 12 by 19, something like that. And even then, I also think it's really hard to paint when you're holding your hand out like this. That's why a lot of times if you see somebody painting something really large, they'll have this, I don't know what it's called, but it's the thing where you rest your hand on it so you can paint, because it's really hard to control fine things with your whole entire arm. So it's nice to be able to put your wrist down and use your fine motor skills. So here I slowed it down because I just wanted you guys to appreciate how much time it takes, how many takes of painting acrylic, especially fine little areas like this. Don't worry, you're not going to have to watch the whole thing like this. But just this one little area, I just wanted you to see how many times. You might also be wondering why I'm mixing my white paint, because that's all I'm using is the white. But I'm using it because, or I'm mixing it because this is a very, very small brush, and I'm trying to paint a very small area. This canvas is only 10 by 10 inches. So by mixing the paint, it kind of puts and I add some water to it, so it gives it a little bit ease, and I thin it out just a little bit. It's a fine line between too thin and too thick, obviously. So here you see me going back to the palette and constantly mixing the white, and you're probably thinking, why is she doing that? So now I've sped it up so you don't have to sit and watch me paint every single, this is not my style. It's just a piece that I thought that the students would like to do. About 10-15 minutes into studying it actually in Photoshop to simplify the painting, I realized that, oh my God, this is not a 3-hour class. This is like a 3-day class. So I simplified it. There's no little boy and a little house in the background, but and I just had the trees and the sunset. And then I realized it's kind of dead looking. So I put the ducks back in. That's what the little duck looking white things are. I think it's really unusual to have a painting that has these very simple, strong colors that are on the opposite ends of the color spectrum. So when you're painting supposedly a sophisticated painting, you don't have the opposites. So I believe red and green, I think it's red and green, are on the opposite spectrums. Purple and orange, yellow and blue, something like that. But because she created this piece so graphically and so flat, it's really beautiful how the red and green don't make your eyes vibrate. Again, I slowed the reel down because I wanted you to see the application of the orange paint. So each little blossom, I dabbed it with the orange brush probably 5, 6, 7 times. You're wondering maybe why I'm not using an orange pen? Because the orange pens don't have better coverage, and the tiniest one, the tiniest pen, the tip pen instead of the chiseled pen tip, is still not small enough. I tried it on the side and no matter what I did, I couldn't get it as tiny as this little brush. So yeah, so that was a lot of dot, 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 and then going back and letting it dry and dot, dot, dot. Yeah, each one of those I dabbed many, many, many times. So even if I dabbed it 2 or 3 times here, I came back 3, 4, 5 times. And then it doesn't help, of course, because the background is orange and red, and the blossoms are orange. So on the top part, I might have added just a tiny bit of white. By the way, I wanted to tell you a little bit about acrylic white. It feels and it paints like whiteout. I don't know if you've ever used whiteout. So whiteout is to white your mistakes out. I don't think we use it much anymore because we do everything. We type everything in a processor electronically. We text things. But back in the day when they used to have to type things and you made a mistake, you used whiteout. And it was great because then it would dry and then you would type the correct letter or word that you wanted. So it's the same thing here. If you make any mistakes in acrylic, what's really great, especially with strong colors like black and red, you can't just paint another color over it to fix it. You really have to white out, like starting all over again. It takes a little time and maybe 2 or 3 steps to get there, but it's worth it because if, let's say, I wanted to do a tree in the middle of this painting, I would really have to white out the area of where I want the tree to be. I can't just put green on it. It would take me 10, 15 layers of green to even get the tree there. So this piece is very, very interesting, and it's a lot like what I do in my own style of art, which is I mix perspective and shading with flat and graphic. You have to be careful to not, if you're going to have some base of shading and some base of perspective, then you have to be somewhat correct in the rest of the painting. So here I'm putting some shade so that the trees look a little bit round. And it's very strange because the trees in the foreground, which means near us, is they're flat white. And then we have these 3-dimensional kind of looking green trees in the background, but it works. And again, this is an ode to Liang. I didn't make up this style, and I didn't make up this composition or the colors. That's why it's called an ode to Liang. Kind of reaching the midway point. I've put all the main elements down. I have the bottom part to do. Funny, a lot of people have come to my shows and seen this unfinished piece of art there for the past year. And they want to purchase it, or they say they like it. And I say, oh, it's not anywhere near finished. So finally, I'm finishing it. This ground area here, I'm adding the water reflections and some texture. It was very tricky because I was trying to simplify it from what Liang had done, but on the other hand, keeping true to what I just said, which is you can't go and do half of the painting, literally half of the painting, flat, and then another part of it in 3D. So you can see at the top, there's a little bit of molding, I shouldn't say molding, shading, painted shading of the trees. You can see the mountains in the background are a little bit simpler, so that, or a lot simpler, so that it feels like they're in the background. The more detail you put, the more it pops out and it feels more or closer to you. So that's usually how you get the depth of the painting. So in the background, the mountains and the sky are going to be more simple, and then up close, you're going to see more detail. So I had to go in and add more of the shading, gradation. Here again, maybe you can kind of see what I'm talking about, where I put the yellow, orange down. I don't know if it's yellow, I think it's orange. Orange down. Oh no, it is yellow. I put the yellow and the orange down, and then I add the red to blend it the other way. I like little strokes, and I love watching those videos of people who just have these nice smooth strokes. I like that too, but then you have to draw it, and I admit I'm a kind of lazy, and I pay for it. So I'm lazy. I just want to get right down to the painting. I want to put just the minimum amount of work into it before I start laying down the color. And sometimes it works out, but you know, if you don't want to spend so much time going back and forth, and you are very particular about what you want, then, you know, do it. Oh, so here, I'm painting the sides. It's a very thick piece. I think it's a 1.5 to 2 inches. I do not like, it's not even a pet peeve, I do not like artists or pieces of art that they don't finish what's showing. If you're going to frame it all the way up to the edge, that's fine. If you're painting on something that hasn't been wrapped around a frame, that's fine as well. Or maybe it's a look, but if you have a really thick canvas frame, you know, 1/2 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, like big blocks on the side, paint them, finish it. Or if you don't want to, then paint on a board. So adding a little bit of drop shadow, just a very subtle cast shadow underneath the ducks helps ground them so they don't look like they're just thrown on top of this piece. So there's going to be, that was little by little. I went back and forth many times because I didn't want to make it too dark, because again, if you make it too dark, too much of a contrast, it's going to bring the ducks forward, and they're kind of in the middle area. They're not in the background, but they're not in the foreground. So little by little, it looks like I go back and forth a lot because I just mixed a tiny bit of black with the red and added quite a bit of water, and then back and forth and back and forth. And that's the thing about acrylic. You can tend to get a little crazy because if it's not wet enough, it starts to look chalky. And if it's too wet, then it starts to look like a wash, and you don't want that. Going back to adding more texture to the water. Texture, you can see I'm trying to add a little bit of reflection without hitting you over the head with the reflection. Again, I don't want the bottom part of the painting to feel like an afterthought, but at the same time, I don't want your eye to go through the piece and then drop off the bottom. back to composition. She has these white, stark trees off to the side. It works though. I don't really ever feel like I just leave the painting. I think it's because there's so much detail in the little branches and the dots of the orange blossoms that are only on the tree in front. So the composition, the way she painted it, really holds your attention. Okay, I added this rock that she had in there and a branch. If I had to do it again, I'd make that branch less angly. I'm not happy with the branch, but at this point, I think it was more important for me to finish this piece. I really have a difficult time finishing pieces, so. And I did feel a little rushed at the end here because that's just my personality. Call it ADHD, call it impatient. I have to also practice what I preach, which is, you don't have to make every piece perfect, and just do it. And you can always go back. That's the really great thing about most paintings, except watercolor. Watercolor, you actually can redo parts of the watercolor as well if you spray it a lot and you soak up the paint, but it can look tattered if you overdo it. But acrylic painting, you can take a whole painting and just paint gesso over the entire thing, or white, or any base color that you want. You can reuse the canvas. So I'll admit I was a little anxious about doing the bottom part here because I felt like I had spent so much time on the rest of the painting. But you shouldn't feel that way, especially with acrylic painting. If you don't like something, I mean, maybe I'll go back later and get rid of that branch and make a different looking branch. Kind of looks like an arm sticking out of the water. I don't know. An amputated arm. But I'm happy right now when I'm painting this because it's like, oh, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I gotta just finish it. Okay, so I pulled out my brush, my pen, and I am doing, it's hard to see because the angle, you want to hold these pens, these ink pens, perpendicular to the canvas or else it'll scratch over and pop out some ink. So I'm dabbing it from the top, so it's hard to see. But here, it's one of my favorite parts of a painting, is going through and noodling everything, fixing it so that those branches were too thick, and it really bothered me through the entire painting. So I finally went in and got a pen, and only in the black areas, obviously. So normally I don't sign my name in the area of the main piece, not because I don't want to sign it, or I want to stay incognito. I just think it takes away from the painting, takes away from what's happening in it. And I just decided to follow her lead. In her painting, she signs it with these beautiful Chinese characters. So I thought, well, I don't want to just sign my name like I normally do. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to make this my M-S-E-N-A, M-Senna. I'm going to make it look like characters. So I practiced a little bit on the side, but I wanted to make sure that you could see that it said M-Senna, but then it kind of looked like characters. Maybe not necessarily Chinese characters, but you'll see. So here, yeah, it looks like it. So I turned the E and the A sideways, but it was really important for it to look good up and down because, yeah, there you go. You can see it. So first I was going to start working on it here, and I thought, no, I'm going to turn it because I really want to make sure it works up and down and it looks like really cool characters. So I figure if I turn it upside down, it's almost like I can't really tell what they are. And I'm going to draw these shapes and characters so that they just look beautiful. They look fun. And I think it worked. So it's leaning a little bit to one side, which I didn't like, and so I fixed it by just making the thickness of the characters thicker on I think it's on in the middle and to the left here. When you're using something with such a fine tip like this, you got to really be patient and go over it many times, because it'll skip on the texture of the canvas and splatter ink. If I was doing more ink work or fine tip, even brush work, I would have gessoed it and painted it, gessoed it and sand it down multiple times until it was almost like paper. But it's not something I'm really interested in doing. This is just the signature, but just to let you know, you gotta proceed very cautiously, very carefully. So that's it. It's coming toward the end, and you can see now my signature kind of looks I don't know about Chinese characters, but I think it looks interesting. In this moment here where it's just sitting there, what I'm doing is I'm looking at it all different angles. I want to see if there's something I missed. Did I miss a blossom? Did I want to add a branch? Did I forget to dot one of the eyes on the ducks? Do I like it? You know, is it working out? Yeah, you know, I'm good with it. So the great thing about acrylic is, again, you can walk away from it for a year and then go back and work on it. But I want to close this one out. This is finished. And I actually really enjoyed explaining this. I hope that you did too. If you have any questions about painting, anything about the piece, please comment and let me know what the question is, and I will get back to you. All right. Thanks. See you again. Bye.